Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining the webinar today and welcome to the Priya webinar about courageous conversations in comms. Really great to have you all here today, and we have a really good lineup of panelists that are experts in their fields ready to talk to you today. My name is Jackie Coleman. I'll be your facilitator today. A little bit about me. I am a senior account executive at Honor. We're a financial services specialist agency based here in Sydney. I work on a couple of clients that are based here and overseas, asset managers, fintechs, a bit of corporate property as well. So I am in a junior role. So like many of you, I'm in that stage where I'm still figuring out a little bit of things, but I do have a bit of experience under my belt as well. For our panelists today, we have Kristen Castandi. She's a client strategy director at Deck PR. She's been in the industry for about 20 years, and she has had experience both in-house and across agencies. She's worked in a couple of sectors such as banking, finance, insurance, property, retail, local government, non-profit, you name it, she's probably done it. Kristen, she's also advised on communications approaches for reputational issues and clients, both for small and larger corporations across the country. Next up, we have Lynette Edmonds. She's the People and Culture Director at Edelman. Lynette has extensive experience working in people, culture, and talent positions over the past 15 years. She did start her career out as a PR consultant, and then she transitioned into recruitment, where she ran her own successful recruitment business, and then into HR, where she fulfilled her passion for creating positive change in complex work environments. She's been at Edelman since 2015, and she's been looking after the company's national recruitment needs before moving to the HR director in July of 2017. Next up, we have Lisa Portland, author, researcher, and founder of No Franks. Lisa has 2 books published, including best-selling book Happy As, and her 3rd book, The Overthinkers, co-authored by Ben Chung, is set to be released in August of this year. Her PhD research relates to intimacy and dating apps, very relevant to our time. Lisa examines how and to what extent dating apps have changed how relationships are facilitated, navigated, and negotiated, and the impact that COVID-19 has had on dating. She's a frequent guest on Studio 10, as been previously featured on the Today Show and The Drum. Lisa writes for a number of publications, including The Conversation, and is also the host of Slow Love podcast series. Our last presenter is Johanna Franklin, project lead at Every Mind. Johanna is an experienced project manager with a Bachelor of Neuroscience honours from Cardiff University and a Prince 2 project management qualification. Johanna's work focuses on designing, delivering, and implementing evidence-driven mental health promotion and prevention projects and translating knowledge into practice. She's currently leading on 2 projects, Ahead for Business, a mental health and wellbeing support for small business owners across Australia, and Minds Together project, a suite of programs and resources designed to inform, empower, and support the mental health and wellbeing of families, educators, and communities. So that's our panel today, and you'll be hearing from everyone in their respective areas of expertise. A little bit of housekeeping. We're going to try and keep the panel discussion to about 35 minutes today. And at the end, we'll have a couple of minutes for Q&As with some of the questions that you have submitted in before the webinar, and also hopefully some live Q&As that come through throughout the session. So without further ado, I think we'll get into the panel discussion. So firstly, just throwing to our first panelist, Lynette. So a lot of our attendees today, they're fairly new to the PR industry or they're looking for their first job. What are your top 3 pieces of advice for those starting their careers?
Thank you, Jackie, and welcome everybody. Yeah, look, what I always say to people is don't just concentrate on tomorrow. Concentrate on where you want your career to be in a year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. I know it seems like a long way away, but really think about the decisions that you're making and the preparation that you're doing. How is that going to stand you instead for the next 3 years? How are you going to be competitive with other people in the industry say at the 3-year mark, which is a bit of a turning point between sort of leaving some of those more junior roles and moving into getting prepared to be an account manager or that sort of communications manager level. So definitely work on getting those building blocks in place, the right foundations. What companies you're aligned to, what brands you're aligned to, what people you're working with, absolutely critical to surround yourself by the smartest, most amazing people who challenge you, who push you, who don't just pay lip service to you. Mentors, and just make smart decisions, not just for today and tomorrow, but for moving into the future. So don't just think about title, don't just think about salary. Those things will all come to you if you get the foundations and the building blocks firmly in place. And while you're at uni, get some great internships under your belt, build your network, start collecting your CV, your LinkedIn connections, and start meeting people, coming to things like this. Reach out to me afterwards, invite me to connect with you on LinkedIn, and just be really smart and confident about building those networks as well.
Yeah, thanks, Dana. I think some really great tips in there, and especially about LinkedIn. I guess it is our digital kind of resume in the modern world. So definitely some good insights there. Yeah. Moving on to Kristen, I know that you've worked both in agency and in-house across your time in the industry. Does the same role apply? And what do you think people should consider when they're choosing whether to go to an agency or client side for their first role?
Yeah, absolutely. The same definitely applies across both in-house and agency. In those early stages of your career, I guess the biggest tip I would give people is just to be really open to everything. I think very early in your career, you may not have a clear view on where exactly your passion lies, and you may not know the full breadth of what may be open to you. So I think it's being open to learning, to trying new things that might be out of your comfort zone. Early on in my career, I would never have thought that I would ended up being more of a financial services specialist, but yet here I am. And it was something that I kind of fell into, and I found out that I loved, and I started doing lots of different things and learned so much more. So be really, really open, put your hand up, say yes, show that tenacity. In terms of in-house versus agency, pros and cons in both, of course. I think I would always say that agency is a really great basis for any career in PR. It's fast paced, you're open to so many different segments, and you're working with so many other PR professionals on a daily basis to learn from. But also have a think about the type of person you are. If you thrive off teams, if you thrive off that creativity, if that's your buzz, definitely agency. If you already know that, this is my pace, it's in property, that's where I want to be, I really want to specialize, that's where I really, as Lynette was saying, in the next kind of 3, 5, 10 years, I really want to focus on this sector, then maybe look for some of those big brands that you really love in that space, or in agency land, look for an agency that has some of those clients that you'd love to work in.
Yeah, definitely. And I think I can attest to, especially the agency comments that you made. I am someone who does thrive in that team and fast-paced environment. So for my first foray into agency life, it definitely has been a very steep learning curve, but I have learned a lot, and I think it is at a bit of an accelerated speed. So definitely agree. I think something you touched on there, Kristen, was about, your first foray into the industry, and should you go agency, should you go in-house? There's a lot of different ways that you can get into this industry. Lisa, I know that you've had a very diverse career across, your years working in the industry, both in agency and in-house as well. You've published several books, and you're undertaking a thesis in relationships. So you do have quite a lot of experience, which is great. Could you tell us a little bit about the alternative career paths that you get to get into the PR role that you want to get into, and what are the benefits of having a diverse career path like yourself?
Sure. So I have a Bachelor of Communications, Journalism and International Studies to start with. And so, when I started off with my degree, I didn't necessarily know what I wanted to do. And I think that, what was clear in my mind was that I really enjoyed writing and that I really enjoyed a lot of political issues and social issues and discussing those things. And so it wasn't particularly clear what sort of pathway was going to open up for me. And I think that is, very common across a lot of different people. It's very early on. You're sort of asked to make a big career decision at that point in time. And I think one of the things that's really important for me to sort of pass on to people is that, you don't necessarily, a lot of people put so much weight on that first decision. I've got to make the right decision. I've got to, either go into the corporate landscape or consumer or PR, or I've got to become a journalist. And the fact is that, this is like such a metaphor that comes up all the time, that your career is not a sprint, it's more like a marathon, right? So, I mean, the fact is that you can shift in gears in so many different ways. And as you go through your career, it opens up different pathways as well onto different things. So, for me, I sort of started off in an NGO, and then I went to government. I was a director of comms in government. I went back to an agency. And then I sort of thought to myself, well, I really want to explore something more creatively from a written perspective, and also from a research perspective, which opened other doors for me as well. So I would say to people that, have fun with it. Like, go out there and, see what really lights you on fire and what you're really passionate about. And, if your first choice is not the right choice, and you get the sense that you're not in the right environment, it's not too late. It's never too late to make a change. I say that to people who are 40 years old, let alone, people that are 22 years old. You could go on a completely alternate pathway at some point in time. And at the end of the day, you've got to think holistically about your own life and about your career within that, and, how it is going to fulfill you, how it's going to make you happy, how it's going to make you joyful as well. So my constant thing is always about joy and what's going to bring you joy as well. So, I think there's a lot of benefits in trying out different pathways, because you do get a sense of what you are truly passionate about, and it gives you an opportunity to really explore different elements to yourself. I often say to people, people aren't brands, so you can be nuanced and complex, and you can have a lot of different facets to your personality that you are looking to explore within your career journey. And so do it, go for it.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. And I can say from personal experience, I remember I did 4 different internships when I was at uni, all in extremely different areas. There was one in fashion, one in agriculture. And I think through making those mistakes and realizing what I did and didn't want to do, I think that it really helped me find that financial comms is really what my passion was. So I agree, making those mistakes and learning from them and moving on, I think, is really helpful, especially when you're starting out in your career. So moving on to a couple of other questions around capacity challenges and mental health. I know that this is something that, as a junior myself, working in agency roles, it's one of the biggest challenges that I've had to kind of face is, how do I manage my capacity? How do I talk to my manager about those issues? And how do I manage up as well? I thought, Kristen, could you share some, quick tips and tricks on how to get this right? And what kind of capacity challenges do you face in agency and in-house?
Yeah, of course. I guess first up, there's no silver bullet for this. This is something that will always be a challenge. If there was an easy solution, we'd all be sitting back having a fabulous time. From a capacity perspective, I guess, it's an issue right through your career, or a challenge right through your career. It just, I guess, changes slightly. It becomes nuanced. So it's not anything that you ever go, yes, I've solved it, I've got it now. So never feel like you're the only one who's struggling with this. And then I think that kind of leads on to, you're not in it alone when you're facing those capacity pressures. You have a team, and that's really what it is. Different people may be facing capacity pressures at different times, but it's really about being really transparent, keeping those lines of communication open with your team so that they know what else you're working on. Don't necessarily try and solve it alone either, because you can just end up in a heap feeling like you're really not achieving anything. Ask for help. Speak to your managers, manage up, manage down. Which is a skill in itself that takes a lot of practice. But again, you're not in it alone. Talk to people. It's a negotiation as well. Perhaps if you can maybe make a start on this, then I can pick it up after if there's been a jump start on it while I work on something else. Get your managers to talk together to help you prioritize as well. It's just constant transparency, negotiation, communication, so that there's really no surprises. That's, I guess, the main thing I would say from a managing capacity perspective. In terms of capacity challenges in-house versus agency in general is much more fast-paced than in-house, because you've got, I guess, much more competing priorities with lots of different clients, and each of them needs to feel special and needs to feel like they're your focus. In-house, you obviously have a bit more control over that. But similarly, agency, you work much more as part of a bigger team than generally I find you do in-house. There tends to be maybe one or two PR managers. So you don't have the same network to rely on in-house. So the challenges are still there. It tends to be more peaks in-house when it may be around results time. It's all hands on board and you're kind of working 24/7, but then it will settle down. Agency tends to be, I guess, a bit more erratic potentially, but it's a great place to really start to hone those skills.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, I think just jumping in with my own experience, the team at Honor is very good at kind of managing those issues and capacity conversations, both among the manager levels and including more like myself in those conversations, to make sure that we are supported and that we are working as a team. And, if I can't do something at one time, then my team member, no matter what level they're at, sometimes can also jump in and help me out, because at the end of the day, the goal is the same, I guess. We're all trying to get the same outcome for the client or for, the brand or company you're working for in-house. So yeah, when you have that kind of mindset that we are a team and, we're not always just individuals working away, it's a lot more beneficial to kind of work in that kind of mindset for sure. So I think, we are saying a lot about capacity and how capacity can be a bit of an issue. And I know that being under the pump, especially when you're in an agency role, and probably the same for in-house, it can get pretty stressful. And I know that is a bit of a theme that goes around the PR industry. So wanted to throw it over to Johanna to see if you could provide some advice around how can we identify this kind of stress and how do we manage it productively?
Thanks, Jackie. So I think it's important to say we all experience stress at times, and stress actually can be quite useful sometimes. So, if you are preparing for an interview or something like that, the stress can kind of get you across the line, get you motivated to practice. So we all go up and down in stress. What we need to look out for is when stress is kind of sustained over a longer period of time, because that's when we become more at risk of mental ill health or mental illness. So the other thing, really important thing to note is we're all affected by things differently, and it sounds like PRs are quite a competitive industry and can be. So it's really important that you're looking at yourself as an individual, not how your colleagues are managing things. And maybe you start an internship or a job at the same time as someone. So don't look at that person and think, oh, he doesn't seem stressed or she doesn't seem stressed, because you don't know what's going on inside, and we all display stress differently from the outside. And the really important thing with stress is to look at a change of behavior. So things like, are you sleeping less? Is your sleep bad? Or maybe you're sleeping more. Sometimes when we're stressed, we don't want to get out of bed and actually can sleep more, things like that. Are you worrying lots all the time? Are you having lots of negative thoughts? Do you feel kind of physically different, tense? Maybe you get headaches, that kind of thing. Is it hard to concentrate? Is it hard to get things done at work or at home? Are you maybe relying on alcohol to sleep or to relax? And yeah, you might be feeling a bit unmotivated, maybe moody, irritable. All of those kind of things can be signs of stress. So once you've identified those things in yourself, it's really important to try to work out the strategies that work for you to get them under control. So what makes you feel good and what helps you relax? And again, this is a really personal thing. So for me, I know if I can exercise before work, that just sets me up for a really good day. But that's me personally. So whatever makes you feel good, whether it's gardening or cooking or catching up with friends, they're really good ways to de-stress just get yourself back to you're kind of able to then build your resilience and able to manage stressful situations. I know we're going to talk a bit about work-life balance later, but that's such an important thing, and that is a really important way to manage stress. So I'll park that for now. We'll come back to it. Talking to people, connecting with people. Kristen mentioned open communication channels. It's so important, and to just catch everything before it gets too overwhelming. So talking to your team or your colleague, your friends, family, your manager, ideally, if you feel confident. The things we're always told to do: eat well, exercise, often hard, but they're really important. And lastly, if things are really getting too much and overwhelming, your GP is your first point of call outside of your friends and family.
Yeah, thanks, Johanna. I think some really great tips in, what you've just mentioned there. And I think, depending on what industry you're in, not just in PR, but, that mental health aspect in your job is so important to keep a track on and make sure that it's in a healthy space, or even if you're working towards getting yourself to a healthier space, it's definitely something to keep in mind. And yeah, I think even as someone who's coming into the PR industry in their first job, it is very overwhelming at times to have all these new people to work with, information to learn, companies to get your head around. And there is a lot of information and stress that can come with that. So I think it's definitely so important to be able to identify when it's getting a little bit too much and when you need to reach out, speak to someone, or some of those strategies like eating better, exercising. But that kind of ties into my next question around having those conversations with your colleagues and your managers. They can be difficult. It can be difficult to go to your manager and say, I'm under the pump, I'm too stressed out, I've got too much on my plate, because you obviously don't want to make it look like you can't handle things, but sometimes you really just have too much on. So I guess, Lisa, do you think it's important to have a mentor to help you guide you through those conversations?
Yeah, I think there is a lot of value in having a mentor, and mentors can take a variety of different shapes and forms as well. I think that traditionally we think that a mentor is potentially someone at a higher level within the career path or something along those lines. And I think that mentors can actually be a variety of different people. It can be a colleague of yours. It can be someone that you really appreciate how their way of thinking. For example, you might have chats with them and you might have light bulb moments with them and think, wow, this is like something that I would really like to integrate into my skill set. So it doesn't necessarily have to be someone that's aligned with your career path per se. It can be someone completely different that can give you like just some insight into what's going on within your situation at this point in time. Sometimes it's great to have a couple of different mentors as well who can provide insights from different perspectives too, and they might be able to really assist in terms of how to attack, or have less operative word, how to have a conversation with your director or whoever it might be. And sometimes it's really about just giving people some of the tools that they need within those conversations as well. So some of the might want to raise, some of the ways that they can meet those conversations to achieve constructive outcomes as well. And I know that sounds, very pie in the sky, but it's super helpful when someone says, look, maybe you can talk to this person by saying X, Y, and Z, and it really opens a door in terms of what you can do. So I really, really believe in the power of mentors in terms of, guiding, shaping, assisting your career, your life in general. But I think that, like I said, I think that they come in so many different ways, shapes, and forms, and that we shouldn't close off mentors if they are colleagues that are at a lower level, or within a completely different circle or within a completely different career, because there is so much information and knowledge that people can offer that could come to play within the workplace as well.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And I think, Johanna, it'd be great to hear from you around how juniors can actually approach their managers with these conversations around mental health. What are some kind of opening lines, or how can they, start those conversations?
Yeah, sure. So I think something really positive to note is conversations about mental health everywhere, and especially in the workplace, has come so far. And that's great for you young people entering the industry. It's much more common and accepted to have a conversation about mental health, and stigma has reduced. So stigma about mental health is one of the main obstacles for people help seeking. So before you start your conversation, make sure you have a good understanding of how you feel, but also using the right language. So we use proper language to explain if you're feeling anxious or overwhelmed, or you feel like you maybe have a mental health issue, rather than words like crazy and mad. They're really stigmatizing. And so that's the first thing to do. Choose the right time. So don't catch your manager when he or she is about to go into a really big meeting or looking really busy. Set a meeting time, and then they're going to be able to give you the time that you need. Make sure it's in a safe place so you both feel comfortable being open. And I think just tell them how you feel, because you might be a person that can function, as I mentioned earlier, out on the outside. It might look like everything's fine. So your manager might have no idea at all that this is how you're feeling. So really just be open. And I think also remembering that if you feel you don't get the support from your manager, there's a lot of other people that you can go to, people in your team, whether you need a kind of a support person to have the conversations, or bigger organizations have EAP or HR. So it's not just one channel of communication to get support.
Yeah, and I'm sure that throughout your careers as well, Kristen and Lynette, you've probably faced a lot of these conversations in your time with junior people and just your colleagues as well. So I know that it's definitely a prevalent issue and an important issue that, we need to keep on top of as individuals, and also as an industry supporting each other as well. I think on that note, I think it's also so important that we have, work, but we also need to have a really good work-life balance. And I know that's a very hot topic word. Everyone talks about work-life balance, what you need to do in your spare time. How do you, not work too much, to have time in the evening to relax, rewind, and prepare yourself for the next day. So Johanna, is there any tips that you have on how do you, have that elusive work-life balance that everyone talks about?
Yes, definitely. And I think it's very achievable. So just to put that out there, we can all achieve a work-life balance. And I think it goes up and down. We all have busy periods where we feel like we're probably working longer. And as long as we have the downtime too, that's really important. So I think over the last year, where lots of people have worked from home, those boundaries have really blurred. And we're going to see that more moving into the future. So making sure you set your work hours, and that's really important, whether you're at home or in the office. That's the first boundary that you can put in place. And making sure that, when you might leave the office at 5 or 6, don't try not to go home and then turn your laptop on again, because that's going to again affect your sleep and your stress levels. Prioritize. I think it was mentioned about, you know, capacity and help getting your team to support. So prioritizing tasks where you're most efficient, and then working with a team to try and manage that. Learn to say no. I think that some people are like that and are good at doing that, and some it doesn't come naturally, and definitely with experience I think that gets easier. And yeah, I think keeping those communication channels open with your manager and your team members is really important.
Yeah, I think that's some really, really great insights that we should all implement in our daily work lives. And I think for me personally, something that I've tried to implement, especially during working from home in COVID, is I like to have my work day, and then the pivotal time for me in the evening is dinner time. And I have my dinner, and after that, I really do try and switch off. And that really is the time for me to distinguish the work day and, you know, my personal life. So that is for me what really works. And other people might have, you know, gone to the gym or, you know, changing into PJs or anything like that. So yeah, whatever works for you, I think it's really important to distinguish those kind of boundaries for sure. So as we reach the end of our panel session, we wanted to touch on a topic that quite a few people were asking questions about. And I think one of the most difficult topics that we can face as a junior, talking to our manager about, is about pay and salary negotiations. So, you know, as a junior myself coming into the industry, I didn't really have any idea about benchmarks or what I should be paid, or, you know, what are other people at my level getting paid, or is any of that even important? So I guess, you know, Lynette, how do you think people starting off in their careers can know if they're getting paid fairly, or how can they know what the benchmark salary is for your first role?
Yeah, so it is, look, it's important for you to be able to manage your own career, and to be able to do that in the most effective and rewarding way is to have data and have information, and to be able to track yourself according to where you want to go. And everyone's different, of course. You should never feel the pressure to be as, I think it was Kristen who mentioned comparing yourself to your peers or your colleagues. It's not healthy. So always try not to do that, because you're in it. You're your own person, and you're running your own race, and it's important for you to really feel comfortable with that race that you're running. But it is important to have data and knowledge about where you are and where you could go, so that you can bring great sort of intel and strategies to the development, to your professional development. So in terms of salary expectations and benchmarking, there's some different ways of getting that information. When you're starting out, do make sure that, you know, especially if you're in an internship and you're actually in an agency or a business environment, actually working with people who have that information. Go and seek out people who know. Go and talk to the HR people, even the finance people if they don't have an HR person, or somebody who is of a level that they can give you some really great information that is not skewed towards, that is actually accurate information. That's what I'm trying to say, is to make sure that you get your information accurately. There are some companies that have salary data that they've got from surveys they run, like Aquent, PRAA does their benchmarking. Try and find information like that, but make sure it's from salary surveys that are relevant to the business you're working in. I do find sometimes that people bring a random one to me and they go, look, you know, I'm being paid under and all this and that, and I look into it, and the amount of businesses that they have surveyed in our own industry is something like 3. Now that to me is not a respectable survey. That is not a survey that is going to hold much weight for me. So it's about making sure that you tap into surveys and salary data that actually is relevant to the industry. Recruiters can be really helpful. I'm not suggesting that when you're starting out that you should use recruiters to find roles, because sometimes companies don't want to pay a recruitment fee for the more junior roles. So better to market yourself individually and independently to agencies. You know, put yourself out there, go and meet people, put your hand up, reach out to people, sell yourself. You'd be surprised by how welcome that is. But do speak to recruiters, because they are right there on the ground and they do have accurate information about salary expectations. So definitely form relationships with them and try and find that information as best you can. I was also going to say that when you are in the agency and you start to think about what's next, really make sure that you understand the business of the business, understand the business environment that you're working in, the type of job you have and the type of company you work in. There's no point going and lobbying for a salary increase if you're way off the mark. So once again, have conversations with people in the company who can give you the right intel, who can help you to frame that conversation in the best way, so that you are aware of what your value is to the bottom line, how you're competing against your KPIs, what your next KPIs are. Have all that information around you. Lean on your line manager. It's their job to help you track and develop your career at the company you're working at. They have a duty of care to help you do that. If they're not doing that, you need to reach out to somebody and make sure that you get that. You have an absolute, I'm quite passionate about young people being given the right support for them to be able to grow their careers accordingly. But make sure that you have the right information. Go and look into the how the business works, what it means, what your charge out rates are, how that relates to your salary, how that relates to the work you're doing, what's your billability rate. If it's 90 or 95%, what should you be doing in the rest of the 5 to 10%? Understand the business you're in and the role that you have in it, and that will make such a difference to how you can negotiate your own career development and the salary that comes with that. It is a subject I could go on and on about, but I know we haven't got time. But I'm very happy to help anyone if they want to reach out.
Yeah, thanks, Lynette. I think some very important points that you raised, particularly around the recruiter point. I think it may not be known, but LinkedIn is really a great avenue for those connections. So it's something that I highly recommend everybody get across and build your network on. Something else around, taking the next step to your next role. I think something I was speaking about with a colleague today is noting down all your little wins throughout your year. Even if you're just saving it into a folder in your inbox, just noting down those little wins, having those proof points around how awesome you are and why you really deserve to take the next step, and to showcase that you really do know what the next kind of step up and that next role is. And I think going back to Johanna's point around being direct and transparent with your managers and having those conversations, it can be difficult, but as long as you approach them at the right time, you have your points very clear in front of you, being direct and transparent is the best way that you can have those conversations. On those kind of conversations, Kristen, I was wondering if you could share some kind of tips and tricks around how juniors can negotiate a pay rise and a promotion. So yeah, I think I talked a little bit around having those kind of little wins throughout the year, but do you have any other insights around how people can approach those conversations?
Yeah, look, again, I think it should be a bit of a no surprises approach. I think it's that open conversation throughout the year where you're checking in with your manager. They know what you're gunning towards, whether it's a promotion, whether it's a pay rise. They know where you want to develop your skills and build that up. So it should never come as a complete surprise and kind of bolt out of the blue to your managers and whoever it is that you're talking to. But it is really about building those cases. You said it's those little wins. What have what are the wins, but also what are the challenges that you face that maybe it didn't go so well, but you can really demonstrate what I learned from this and what I was able to move forward, again, just to show that maturity. So it's really about building that case of this is what I'm bringing to the business. This is how I've grown and developed and supported the team. It may be supporting juniors coming in. You may be running the intern program. It could be lots of different things that you're taking on yourself. So it's really building that case of this is what I contribute to the agency. This is why I think my value should be X or Y. It's also about the framing of it, framing in that way of what you're bringing to the agency and demonstrating that, or the business, and demonstrating that commitment. Had a conversation at one point where someone mentioned to me that they would like a pay rise because they wanted to buy a house. That's not how to approach it. You frame it very much, and this is my career, this is what I'm doing. That's kind of an output over there, but that's not how to frame something. So take that personal piece out of it. It's very much about your career and what you're doing and kind of how you and your business are kind of growing together. And also, I do think it's important not to get too hung up on salary. It's super important, of course, but it's about looking at that full package of what you're getting out of your role and where the career progression could be. I think sometimes we get very, very hung up on, looking at other people and going, oh, I think they earn more than me and I really should be there at this age. But it's also looking at the opportunities for learning and where you could go in your career. I mean, personally, I've kind of moved all over in my career, and I've actually taken, I guess, a cut in pay at certain points for specific jobs, because I've known that job, okay, it's not ideal that I'm taking a cut in pay, but I'm going to learn so much, and that is going to grow my skill set so much that ultimately will open up so many more avenues for me. So I think it's looking holistically as well about kind of the full package that you're getting out of it.
Yeah, thanks, Kristen. So to finish off our panel section of the webinar, I think, Lisa, I wanted to ask you a big sky-high thinking question around how do you know if you've kind of made it in PR? I mean, to you, do you think there's a benchmark, or, is becoming a CEO kind of where it's at, or, what are your thoughts on that?
I think it's a really difficult question, and I think it probably has a very different response from a lot of different people. I think everyone would have their own perception on, what having made it means per se. I think that I'm probably a little bit of an interesting person to ask on this question, because I'm a little bit more unstructured and a little bit different of a different thinker when it comes to this sort of space, but I don't necessarily believe in the concept of having made it in anything. I think that, we come to every situation as complete to begin with. And so, I mean, whether you are at a lower level or the CEO or whatever you might be, you have to think about the present, you have to think about the now, you have to think about the joy and the life that you currently have, and whether or not you're really enjoying and learning at this point in time, right? And for me, that's really having made it. And that might be a bit of an esoteric answer to that question, but I don't necessarily believe that all of our pathways accumulate to being a CEO, for example. All of our journeys and pathways are very different. And we might be really passionate in different spaces and on different journeys as well. And some of us might reach, being a CEO and find ourselves incredibly unhappy within those positions because they weren't potentially aligned with, the values or the joys that we really wanted. So I think, when we think about having made it, I think we need to really examine who we are personally and what makes us happy, what brings us joy personally, and pursue those goals rather than a narrative that is potentially set out by society, that is potentially set out by the hierarchy of PR in terms of what leadership looks like and what is the top of leadership as well. I mean, someone might reach, a position as an account director or a senior account director or group account director and think, I actually love being a group account director. This is where I want to stay. I don't want the burden of going on to further levels because I really enjoy this. I'm passionate about the clients. I'm passionate about the work I do, about the team. This brings me real joy, without the stress, without the anxiety. So I don't think there's necessarily a made it per se. And I'd actually be interested to know what the other panelists think too. But I think that, having made it is completely determined by yourself and not by anything arbitrary or anything that is applied from other people.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And I think as I learn and grow in my role as well, I think my targets of, where I want to take my next step moves all the time as I'm exposed to new roles, new kind of opportunities, it changes. So yeah, I agree. There's not really one particular, I've made it moment, but as long as you keep learning and you're towards that direction is very valuable. Maybe Kristen, did you want to share a couple of your quick thoughts on that?
I completely agree. It's very personal to you, but I think also holding ourselves up to one goal, and that's where I'm going, that can almost blinker us to so many opportunities. So I think it's not just saying, okay, I'm going to get to CEO, because as you know, as Lisa was saying, as you get different experiences, different opportunities, you'll start to go, actually, no, this is where my passion lies. And I think as well, at different stages in your life, your values shift and change slightly, and what's most important to you at different points in time shifts and changes as well. If you'd asked me at kind of 23 where I wanted to be in my career, it would have been very different to if you'd asked me at 30 and if you'd asked me at 40. Not that I'm in my 40s, yes. But it shifts and changes all the time. So I don't think it's actually a good thing to put kind of an end goal. I would almost say, like, okay, in the next couple of years, I want to be here. And then reevaluate, is this still what I want? Is this still what I love? Is this still where I'm finding that joy? In the next few years, where do I want to be? And sometimes your personal will kind of be more important versus your professional. So I think it's just being open to everything, and there's no defining moment of, yes, I've made it, in life.
Yeah, thanks. I think really interesting insights. Johanna, did you have anything to add there around, how can you kind of stop yourself comparing, from comparing yourself to other people in terms of where you need to go in your kind of career journey?
Yeah, I think just to agree with the Kristen and Lisa, definitely it's about the individual, also where your skills lie, because I have found in different stages of my career, I've ended up just managing people and coming away from the core stuff that I really like and actually that I've found I'm quite skilled at, and so have sometimes stepped back to be able to do that. And it's just different in different times of your life, and you prioritize. You might take time off to have children or care for someone, so it's just you're an individual, just making sure that's your focus, not the other people around you, even though it can be hard, and you can come back from time away or trying different things and feel like you maybe have gone backwards, but it's just about you and finding that what you enjoy and how to keep that work-life balance too.
Yeah, no, definitely agree. Well, that concludes the panel portion of our webinar today. Thank you to all the speakers for your very insightful pieces of knowledge. We wanted to move on to the Q&A section, where we have a couple of pre-submitted questions from some of the panelists when you registered. So I think a couple of them we've already covered off in our discussion, but I did want to kind of highlight a couple of questions that we have got submitted. The first one is, my manager requires me to perform Marcom tasks for a pay rate much lower than award rates. How do you demonstrate your worth when your manager doesn't recognize the value of your skills and knowledge? Lisa, I thought you could tackle this one.
Goodness, okay. Okay, well, look, I mean, I think that, as much as I am quite, I'm a blue sky thinker, I'm also a very pragmatic thinker as well. And I think that a good way to come forward with something is always to come forward with a business case. And, I spend a lot of time working in government as well. And so one of the things that you can't really refute when you're putting something forward, whether it's a new policy proposal or whether you're putting something forward to whatever it is, the background, the research, the key points, all that sort of stuff around it, right? So I think that, if you are not being recognized around your particular skill set, and you believe that you are bringing a skill set to this, and that is different, that is unique, that is really enriching the business, that is making change, that is making impact on a client as well, that sort of impacts on the revenue that the business is producing, right? Well, you can put that all together and sort of, present it to your manager in a way. I can't remember who said it. I think that Johanna made a great point earlier on about setting time aside. This was more about the mental health discussion, but I think that's always important. Put the time in your manager's diary, set it up so that they know what's coming, give them a few dot points about what you're going to discuss, and go forward with your business plan, which can be, a very, sort of very structured piece in terms of the argument, and demonstrating your worth within that space as well. And sometimes, you know, there is a lot of there is something really positive about shining a light on some of the skills that you might be bringing that might previously not have been recognized as well. Because, you know, I've managed a lot of people, and, you know, some people would say, oh, you know, this person is great at X, Y, and Z, but not so great at F, right? And that's okay, because not everyone has to be great at F, right? You know, sometimes this person brings skills and qualities in X, Y, and Z that are unmatched in the business. So it's really important to shine the light on those things and to show how those elements go towards retaining clients, go towards bringing in financial revenue, go towards, you know, creating a, you know, a really social workplace, for example, some of those sociocultural sort of things within the workplace. So I would go about doing this in a pragmatic way, because I think there is a lot of power in pragmatism as well.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that circles back to the fact that we need to have open and transparent conversations with our managers and our colleagues around those points, and having those little notes around your challenges and your wins throughout your time in the role is definitely important. So when it does come to those conversations, you do have those proof points to kind of guide your discussion. The next question that we have is, I think, a little bit more specific to an in-house role. So Kristen, I think I'm going to throw this one over to you for a response. I work in a financial institution, a bank, let's say, where it's very easy for my peers to show they have saved or raised X amount of dollars, but it's much harder for me to quantify the comms value add. How can you effectively request a raise if you can't clearly quantify your value add to the organization? Bit of a tough one.
Yeah, I mean, this is the age-old, I guess, challenge with PR, isn't it? That it's never guaranteed. It's not, I guess, you know, we've come a long way in terms of measurement, which is amazing, but it is, you know, there's still challenges there. What I would say is, particularly when you're starting out in your career, I guess a lot of times we come in, and when we're starting out, we're very tactical. We have tasks that we have to do. We complete those tasks. That's awesome. But we don't necessarily see the bigger picture, see the strategy, see the context. So I think that's why it's so important that even if you feel like I'm this little piece of this huge organization, that you understand what the strategy is. What's the business trying to achieve? Where are we going? What do we want to be known for? Because then you can put into context the piece that you do. And every single piece within an organization is so important. You know, you take that out, things don't run as smoothly. So no matter what it is you're doing, it is super important. And it's being able to actually then set your KPIs, or yes, the smaller piece of the puzzle that you may be trying to solve for, but understanding that that also has to ladder up to the huge strategy. And it's working then with your manager to say, okay, the strategy of our business is this. How can I link my KPIs to that strategy? And it might not always be a direct line right through, but to be able to say, okay, well, reputation is huge. You know, there's been inquiries into financial services. There's been a lot going on. You know, we've done X, Y, Z, which has really been about showcasing our people and trying to build more of a softer cultural piece. Not always as measurable, but to be able to talk about what you've done and why you've done it and how it contributes to that bigger picture strategy. I think really that's the way to go. Always try and ladder it up to the big strategy wherever you can. And everything that you do will absolutely ladder to that. You just get to work through what that is.
Yeah, most definitely. I think as you progress in your career, even for clients, not only for yourself, you always find yourself linking back to the broader strategy. What's the broader strategy? How is my work contributing to that broader strategy? How am I trying to take this business forward to really help them achieve their business goals? We have a couple more questions and a little bit of time. So one question I wanted to tackle was one around resumes and CVs, which I think I might get Lisa and Lynette's comments on. So what are industry leaders looking for, and what will stand out to them on a resume? I might throw to you, Lynette, if you had some thoughts on that one.
Yeah, look, relevance. First and foremost, relevance. So I need to know very quickly if you actually are relevant to the opportunity that I'm looking to fill. So I don't need to have an amazing bells and whistles style designed CV, but I will determine quite quickly based on where you currently are. I can read a resume literally within a matter of seconds, and I need to know that you essentially have the key ingredients that make you, first and foremost, someone who is relevant to the opportunity. Now, if I think, oh, this person does look like they've got some relevance, then I'll keep reading. But if I feel at first glance that they, and this may sound like, you might be thinking, well, how would she know that? She doesn't read through it. It's just practice and experience and knowledge about the industry that I work in. So I need to see a correlation between what you're doing and who you are and what I need. So be wary about having a stock standard CV for everything. It is important to treat your CVs with a little bit of strategic thinking, even when you're starting out. So if you're looking for an opportunity at a more corporate style business, or maybe a more brand and lifestyle business, or a company that concentrates on healthcare, or everything in between, a sports related company, show me that you're a good fit, not just from the work, the qualifications, the experience you have, but who you are as well. So I want to see all of that. I want to see your experience, even if it's only a little bit, but I want to see that you are a good cultural fit as well. It's hard to get that across, but it's not impossible at all. And I should say, so I know you've touched on LinkedIn ever so briefly, but I will always look you up on LinkedIn without fail. And I know a lot of people doing talent acquisition or recruitment don't always do that. I do. I always will. And I encourage you to have a profile that stacks up on LinkedIn, because I will always go there. And most people I know in my field will go there as well. So try and have that, your online professional CV presence, try and have that looking as appealing and as enticing as possible. But yeah, relevance is the first and foremost thing.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks on that. I can see we have a couple of great questions in the live Q&A chat that we've kind of covered off, but I think we have time for one more question that I think is really important and timely for us to get some insights on. And all the rest of the questions in the live chat, we definitely want to come back to you on either through our Priya comms or in a follow-up event as well. So we will try to get to all those through other avenues. Unfortunately, we have limited time today. But my final question for the panelists is around promotions. So how do you navigate seeking a promotion in the current unprecedented environment, i.e. when your performance is solid, you're doing a great work, you're doing a great job, but results are fluctuating due to factors outside of your control, such as COVID, bit of a curveball we had. I might hand that over to Kristen for your insights on that one.
Yeah, sure. And that's why it's so important to have that broader view. Yes, you want a promotion, you've worked hard towards that, but also understanding what is going on in the industry, because it may be that, your employer, yeah, absolutely, they see it, but they just can't at the moment give you what you need, but perhaps there's other things that they can do to kind of show that commitment to your career path. So I think, again, it's that business case. This is what I've done. This is what I've achieved. This is what I've brought to the business, that lines up with your strategy. And just having that really open and honest conversation, like, this is where I want to go. This is what I'm aiming for. How can we get there? Like, I'd love it now. Am I ready now? Am I not? I think I'm doing really well in X, Y, Z. What else can I work on? How can we put in place a plan to get me there if it's not going to be now? Can we check in again in 3 months? Can we check in again 3 months after that? Can we put in place shorter term goals so that you've got that commitment? And again, your employer knows exactly what you're aiming towards. You'll get that initial feedback of, actually, you're awesome here, but we want to keep working here to get you to that next stage. So you're really, really clear on what you need to do. And there's like a clear roadmap.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks, Kristen. And I think a very timely question that has been on the minds of a lot of us, especially me as well. You know, with COVID happening last year, it did kind of skew some of my thoughts and my career path a little bit. But, you know, I did have those conversations with my manager and I did try to stay on track. So very important topic. Well, that is just about time. So I just wanted to say, I know we have a couple of really great questions in the live Q&A. And as I said, we'll try and follow those up in future comms from Priya or perhaps, you know, other events down the track. So I just wanted to say a very big thank you to all of our panelists today, Johanna, Kristen, Lisa, Lynette. It's been so great hearing all of your insights and your expertise. For all of us young junior people already in the industry or trying to fight our way through, we really appreciate your time. It's been so great to hear from you. A big thank you to the Young Guns team. Thank you so much for putting this together. It's been really great conversation, I think, and very helpful to a lot of us. Did just want to flag a couple of things for all the attendees today. There is a Young Guns page, a group on Facebook. So I really do highly recommend that everyone joins that group. There is a lot of discussion around networking events and tips from your colleagues and peers. There's also Meme Monday, which we like to kind of liven up the group every week with. You'll see that the link is in the chat feature now. So if you want to head there and join, really great if you could be a part of that community. And yeah, just keep posted on the Priya website and all the comms that go out with any other future events and kind of things that are happening in the space. It's very exciting that we can always come together even via Zoom in these challenging times. So yeah, I just wanted to say a big thank you to everyone. And yeah, keep in touch through all the other channels, and I look forward to chatting with some of you offline. So thanks again, everyone.
Thank you, Jackie.
Thank you.
No worries. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.